The Judicial Service Commission will consider 4 candidates for the position of Chief Justice, including 2 Constitutional Court Justices, the Supreme Court of Appeal President and the Gauteng Judge President. Well, joining us to speak to us about the importance of the work done by the Justices of the Court in keeping the country's democracy healthy, we're joined by retired Justice Edwin Cameron. Justice Cameron, let me perhaps just begin by congratulating you. Of course, last week was a big week for you. Along with others, you were given the Order of the Baobab in Gold. Congratulations. What does that mean to you?
Thank you so much, Kathy. And I think that it's important to say that the award was given for causes, I think, rather than for people. And the causes were the rule of law and the judicial independence in South Africa. And, of course, HIV/AIDS stigma and treatment, the struggle for that. And, of course, also mentioned by the presidency, the fight for LGBTIQ equality in South Africa. But thank you so much.
Talking about law and order, the Constitutional Court, as the apex court of the land, of course, has the final say. It's the final arbiter when it comes to matters relating to the Constitution. Let's talk about what it means for the court to be vacant without a Chief Justice. Are you particularly worried about that?
It is very troubling, Kathy, but I hope the President moves swiftly. He will have names before him. I hope that the Judicial Service Commission moves swiftly to interview the names that have been sent through to it. And it's imperative that an appointment be made at the earliest possible moment. In fact, it was imperative that it be made before Chief Justice Mogoeng stepped down on the 11th of October. That's a month and 10 days ago. It's lamentable that we are sitting without a Chief Justice. We're also sitting without the 4 judges whose terms of office came to an end, as well as my term of office that came to an end more than 2 years ago when I stepped down after 25 years on the bench. So this is a lamentable and indeed, one should say, in understated terms, a deplorable situation. But let it be said, Kathy, that the court in its permanent members has some very strong and courageous members. I don't want to name them all, but 2 who joined Justice Sisi Kampepe in the extraordinarily brave and important judgments that sent former President Zuma to jail earlier this year include former Supreme Court of Appeal Justices Stephen Majid and Justice Zukisa Piti. So there are strong members of the court, but it needs leadership and it needs the vacancies in its number to be filled as quickly as possible.
Many of us are not privy to what happens at the court when we're not perhaps taking some of the judgments that are of national importance live on our TV screens or even on our radios. Talk to us a little bit about what the impact then of these vacancies is likely to be, especially the workload then that rests on the justices that are currently there.
It's really rough, and I'm afraid it's showing. Despite the integrity and competence of most of the judges there, I hear complaints about applications for leave to appeal, which really should be dealt with maximally within 3 months, which have lain there for a year. I hope that that particular case that was drawn to my attention by a young advocate whom I know in practice, I hope that that has been resolved. But the underlying problem is twofold, Kathy. The one is that a court of permanent members needs permanent members. And while it's good to have a small smattering, a fringe smattering of acting judges so that they can get experience, for example, Justice David Unterhalter, who's in the Supreme Court of Appeal acting now, I hope that he will very soon go to the Constitutional Court to act there, because one of the things that was held against him in his 2 interviews earlier this year was that he hadn't had acting experience. So there's a legitimate place for acting appointments, and our courts have always had acting appointments, unlike other apex courts. The Constitutional Court from the very start had acting judges in it, but never 5 out of 11. But the second point really is the workload point that you have rightly mentioned. It's a tough job, really. I'm not going to ask your viewers this evening to shed tears. Judges are well rewarded. We get a good salary. We get cars. We get a good pension. I'm now on pension, and it's probably the best pension in South Africa's public service. So no tears for us, but the job is tough. And you need cohesive colleagues. You need to be able to build up a reservoir of trust and understanding with your colleagues, even when you differ from them, perhaps particularly when you differ from them. And to have a sort of roundabout merry-go-round of acting judges coming in and a near preponderance of acting judges in the country's apex court, really, in my very respectful view, is intolerable.
Of course, we've also entered an unprecedented phase when it comes to the shortlisted names. We're going to have 4 potential Chief Justices of the Constitutional Court have their interviews done, probably publicly. Are we going to see a continued level of scrutiny for judicial officials, perhaps in a way that precedes what has happened before?
Kathy, I don't know if you're being tactful, but I'm not going to be tactful with Newzroom Afrika's viewers on this Sunday evening. We don't have much room for tact with our country in the state in which it is. We need to be blunt, and we need to be active, and we need to take action. So if you were referring to the dreadful performance by the JSC on 2 occasions earlier this year, I think it was utterly lamentable. I think that some candidates, including David Untalte, including Justice Daya Pillay, were treated disgracefully. And we watched a rubbishing of Justice Pillay. Whatever one might think of her associates, she was treated in a way which was screamingly unfair by a body that is supposed to be screening people for appointment. So let me get to your question. I just wanted to explode the level of tact in it, Kathy, and I know you're a tactful anchor, and I applaud that, but sometimes we have to tell things the way they are. To get to your question, the 5 candidates sent through are all judges of stature. We've got Justice Dunstan Mlambo, who is an outstanding administrator. He has given extraordinarily courageous judgments in the Gauteng court. He fixed up the Labour Appeal Court. He fixed up the Gauteng Court. He's on the top of many, many administrative issues, but he also has judicial independence and courage. We have Justice Madisa Maya, who is the only woman amongst the 5, who also has an excellent reputation. She's the president of the Supreme Court of Appeal. She's an experienced lawyer. She's an excellent judge and with an untarnished reputation. We have Justice Mbuyiseni Madlanga, who was a colleague of mine on the Constitutional Court, an outstanding judge, a judge with real passion, I would judge. Justice Madlanga has a deep feeling for what the law should be, and this comes through in all his judgments. And then, of course, there's Deputy Chief Justice Ray Zondo, who was an obvious shortlistee, who is heavily weighted at the moment with the burdens of his commission. And I just saw today in the newspaper that he has to produce his report by the 1st of January. And I wish him very well, because the next 5 weeks are going to be absolutely crunch weeks. But he is a person who takes his judicial duties seriously, as we've seen countless times during the commission process. So I don't think that any of these candidates would deserve or would put up with the type of vilification and disorder that characterized the 2 previous sets of interviews this year. I hope that they are conducted with respect for each of those candidates' achievements and with proper chairing. I don't think that the 2 previous sets of interviews this year were decisively, firmly, and directively chaired, as should be done.
Retired Constitutional Court Justice Edwin Cameron, let me thank you for your time tonight.